have been looking forward to this tutorial. My name is Matt Marvin. If I could choose one tool that we have so far built into this IDS software that is my absolute favorite, it is this one. It's our color subtraction tool. We looked at ways to remove things like pattern backgrounds and things that are difficult to remove in other software programs like black. Black is notoriously difficult for removing from images in software programs. And especially as we started to look at pattern removal, we looked at things like FFT and some of the options that we could build into the software. And we decided to go one step back and look at the big picture and really think about what is it as latent print examiners that we're doing with our images. And so we decided we're going to make a couple assumptions. And assumption number one is going to be that the processes that were applied to the latent print image were applied properly to develop contrast with the background. And most of the time that's the case. In fact, virtually all the time that's the case, that if your chemical or physical processes are applied properly, the goal was to develop contrast with the background. The second assumption we made is that every part of a latent print image has color to it. It has an RGB value. Even if that RGB value is 0, 0, 0 for 0 red, 0 green, 0 blue, it still has a value. And if we could isolate those values, we could work with it. So every time in our experience we've had a patterned background, if we properly applied our chemical processes, we had contrast with our background, and that not only did our latent print then have RGB values, but our background did too. So we started with that premise. And then we tried to develop up a way that we could isolate and subtract out specific RGB values and then expand that out. So this is by far the greatest tool I have ever seen in latent print work. You're going to love it. I would say I hope you love it, but you're just going to love it. So let me show you how it works. Okay, so up here on my screen right now, I've got one of our test examples that we built up when we were trying to work on this filter. So we've got kind of a worst case scenario here for latent prints. We've got this grid line background. We've got different shades of blue. We've got dark blue. We've got some light blue down here. And we've got different darknesses of prints. We've got a pretty dark print here. We've got some lighter prints up here. Virtually no ridge detail really visible down in the lower left-hand corner. So really kind of a worst case scenario for how are we going to pull information out of or how are we going to pull this background information out of this image so we can focus on our latent prints. So again, this is a test example that we built up, and I want to walk you through it because it'll help me explain to you how this process works. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the left-hand side of the screen to the tool palette. We're going to click on Image Processing, and we're going to go click on Color Subtraction. Color Subtraction is going to pull up a new window for us. And there's a few things that you need to be paying attention to in this window. First of all, pay attention to this middle bar here. This is the color that your mouse is going to be over. And underneath here, you're going to see the red, green, and blue values associated with whatever color my mouse is on. We have a negative threshold, and I'll explain how you can adjust that here in just a second. But pay attention to this color and pay attention to this red, green, and blue value here on your negative threshold. You also have a positive threshold on the right-hand side with a red, green, and blue value on the right-hand side as well. So as I move my cursor around the image, you're going to see those changing. You're actually going to see those colors change. You're going to see the RGB values change. Over here on the right-hand side at the top, we have a positive threshold. So this goes all the way from 0, meaning one very specific color, all the way up to 20. And this negative threshold starts at 0 and it goes all the way down to negative 20. So what that means is if I had these thresholds set all the way out, then whatever color my cursor is over, it's going to take this red, green, and blue value and it's going to give it a plus or minus 20 value. So now as I move my cursor around, you're going to see that while the colors change, you're going to see the darker color for the negative threshold, the lighter color for the positive threshold in this example. And the one in the middle is going to be, again, the pixel value that my cursor is directly over top of. Okay, so we could see that there's different values here for the ridge detail than there are for the background. So to remove a color, we have to replace it with a background. It essentially goes transparent, although even though it goes transparent, we set a background color. So that background color defaults to white. You can click here to turn that on to black, Or if you wanted a different background color, say you even wanted to click on your ridge detail to isolate your ridge detail and essentially turn that transparent, which would then change it to a different color, you could choose any color you wanted from the tool palette, or excuse me, from the color palette we have here, or you could even go to a custom color and pull up any color background you would like. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and stay with the default. I'm going to leave it as a white background. If at any point in time you mess up and want to start over, and we may very well in this tutorial, we'll click this reload image. Once you're done, you can save the image, and that'll save it to your film strip in the main view of the software. If you zoom in, we've got a button to be able to pan across your image and zoom in and out. So you click this to zoom in and out to move around your image, and then click it again so that your next click will then be subtracting colors. We've got an undo here. And then if you've zoomed in a lot, you can click on Fit to Window, and that'll zoom you back out. So now that we know where some of the options are, let me show you how this works. So I'm going to start with my positive threshold plus 20, my negative threshold minus 20. So that means wherever I click, it's going to remove those color values that are plus or minus 20 from the middle value that you see in the top middle of the screen. So that 28, 40, 142 plus or minus 20 are going to be our negative thresholds and positive thresholds. So one click, and we're going to see that we already pulled out all those values in between. Now, that helped a lot with getting rid of some of that blue in the background, but we still have these nasty grid lines. So what we also built in here is the ability to click and drag. Now, as you click and drag, what happens is you click your left mouse button, and as you drag any pixel value that cursor goes over, it's going to continue to remove those RGB values, plus or minus whatever your threshold is, as you continue to move your cursor along. So every pixel value that it goes along, it's going to continue to pull those out. So what I'm going to do in this example is I'm actually going to click on this grid line, and I'm going to just start tracing this grid line. And you're going to see very quickly it disappears. So now we can actually see our ridge detail, and we can see what we're working with our latent prints. The other great thing about this is you're thinking to yourself, well, how do I make sure that I don't pull out any ridge detail in this? Well, there's a couple ways you can do it. First of all, you could do it visually. As you move your cursor along the ridge detail, you're going to be able to see your negative threshold, your positive threshold, as well as the color in the middle, and you can compare that to what you're seeing in the background. You could also do just a little bit of math, and you could run your cursor along the ridge detail and figure out about what your RGB values are for your ridge detail, and then make sure that as you click out here outside the ridge detail, that the area that you're removing wouldn't fall within the any of the ridge detail RGB values. I hope that makes sense. Give us a phone call if that's at all confusing, and we'd be happy to explain it to you another way. So here's our finished product, and here's what it looked like to begin with. You'll know very quickly if you do happen to snag some ridge detail. Let me do that for you just real quick so you can see what it would look like. Again, we're going to click there. We're going to click and drag on some of these grid lines. And now, if I happen to get over into some of these values that are actually associated with the ridge detail, you're going to see those prints lighten up pretty quickly. You're going to see that ridge detail start to disappear. So you can do it mathematically by actually doing some math on the RGB values of the pixels that you're subtracting, plus or minus your thresholds, and comparing the background to your ridge detail. You can do it visually two ways: by looking at your negative threshold and positive threshold color values that are in the top of the screen, or you can pay attention to your ridge detail and watch for any potential areas where you start to see that ridge detail start to lighten up, and that would be where you've actually pulled out some of that ridge detail. You could also change your background color to a different color, maybe something like a bright red, where it'd be very apparent if you happen to pull out any of the RGB values in your latent print detail. So let me give you another example, and I've pulled up a few kind of casework style examples. I'm not going to save that one. I'm going to show you this one. This one is actually two faint silver powder processed prints on a black backing card. This is kind of a common problem that when people use a silver powder and they don't get enough on there, or the ridge detail isn't grabbing onto the powder very well, or that you get too much silver powder in the background, it's difficult to see the ridge detail. So I already pulled up my color subtraction tool here. On my positive and negative threshold, I'm not gonna go plus or minus 20 because this is too faint. I'm gonna go plus or minus 3. Now, really I'm going to be pulling out black. That's going to be my goal as I go to work with this image. And so as I pull out black, that's going to be 0, 0, 0. Is the RGB value for black. So if I pull out 0, 0, 0, the -3 really doesn't matter because it can't go into the negative, but it's not going to hurt to set it anyway. The software is already designed to cap the upper and lower limits of the RGB values. So I set that at -3, and now I'm going to go down here into the bottom of my image, and I'm going to try to find myself a true black. So I'm watching my RGB value. There we go, right there. 0, 0, 0 is the pixel underneath my cursor. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it a click. And now all of a sudden we can see, hey, we actually have quite a bit of ridge detail. In fact, on the left-hand side, we have a print that is definitely suitable for comparison, which is great because if I hit the reload image, you're going to see what that looked like to begin with. It looked like that. Again, pulling black out of images so far with the software that's available in the industry has been a terribly difficult thing to do. Let's do another example. Again, it's my favorite tool, so you got to bear with me here because it is just an amazing tool. I love all the things that this one can do. This example I wanted to show you guys, this is a white powdered print on a black backing card. And the great thing about this one is that it works really well if you don't do anything with your thresholds. If you truly just pull black. So I'm going to pull black, 0, 0, 0. My negative threshold is 0, 0, 0. Positive threshold is 0, 0, 0. It's very easy to find a 0, 0, 0 in here. I'm going to click it, and there is your print. Let me reload that for you so you can see what it looked like before. Again, a 0, 0, 0, and what it looks like now. Now, it's a little bit surprising because as you first see this ridge detail, you think something went wrong because this ridge detail is black. Well, no, when the ridge detail was up against a true black as 0, 0, 0, you could kind of see some of the white and gray tones that were in there. But once we turn that black to a complete white, those tones were actually so dark they appear black in this image. But you can see as I move my cursor around here and we look at those RGB values, these actually are not truly black. The sections of this print that were truly black got removed and were turned white because our background color right now is white. Okay, one more example. And this is one where we're going to have to change up what we do with our thresholds a little bit. So this is an anhydrous print on a piece of yellow paper, kind of like legal pad paper. We've got some blue lines that are getting in the way. Again, I went up to image processing in the tool palette. I'm going to hit color subtraction. Now, I'm going to start by getting rid of that yellow. So I'm going to pull my thresholds, my positive and negative thresholds, all the way to plus or minus 20. I want to avoid clicking anywhere where there's ridge detail. And if you look closely, you're going to see that we have a color change where these blue lines cross over into the anhydrous color of the print. They turn a darker blue than they are out here. They're almost more like kind of a green color outside the print. And as we get inside the print, they're much more of a darker blue color. So what I'm going to do is I've got my thresholds at plus or minus 20, and I'm just going to click and I'm going to drag so it continues to pull those values out. And yellow's gone. Now it's a little bit easier to see what I'm talking about now with this green color here, and when we get over the ridge detail it turns to a darker blue. So what we want to do next is we want to be a little bit careful with the green and the blue. We don't want to pull out anywhere where the this line has crossed the ridge detail, but we do want to isolate the areas where it hasn't. They're kind of closer in color. So I'm going to start over here away from the print where I've got these green lines, and I'm just going to start clicking and dragging. I changed my thresholds to plus or minus 10, and you're going to see these values just continue to get pulled out. I'm going to go ahead and trace this line all the way down. And again, you can see these values getting pulled out. And let's go to this next one. Again, be careful not to cross over that ridge detail if you're doing this method. I'm going to remove these values coming up. Let's go grab this outer line here. We'll run this whole line too. And again, I'm just clicking and dragging as I do this, and it continues to pull these values out of the image. Any values it pulls out, it turns white. Okay, so now let's take a look at this print. Let's click on that pan zoom, and you're going to see that to turn that off and go back to color subtraction, we're going to need to click that pan zoom again. We've got this red text up at the top giving you a notice of that. But I'm going to use my mouse wheel to zoom in. And what you're going to see now is you see that as this ridge crosses, this is where we get the dark blue. But when we get into the furrows, we've actually removed most of that color from the furrow. So now we can actually trace and track where these ridges go, what this ridge path is right through here, what the ridge path is right through here. Again, you see that kind of darker purple color, whereas here in the furrows, that's been removed. And you can keep working with this. If you're super confident that you are in a furrow area, you can continue to pull out some of these color values that are specific to the furrow. Again, be very careful. If you do move your mouse over and you accidentally hit a ridge, then you'll just need to reload your image and start over, or you can hit your undo and it'll undo the last step that you did. Anyway, this is by far my absolute favorite tool in the software. I hope you love it as much as I do. It has done amazing things for our ability to pull black out of these faint images. The silver powdered print on a black gel lift has just kicked my butt time and time again. And now it's not anywhere near the issue it used to be. So hope you're really enjoying this. If you have any questions, please give us a phone call anytime at 1-866-TEAM-RSA, or you can reach us on our website at www.ronsmithandassociates.com. Again, I'm Matt Marvin. I'm the Latent Print Technical Manager with Ron Smith and Associates at our headquarters office here in Collinsville, Mississippi. Hope you're enjoying the software. We hope you have a great day. Take care and God bless. Oh yeah.